2. 3. Servlet or JSP? Well, if servlets can do whatever JSP pages can, and vice versa, what is the difference between them? And if JSP pages are that easy to write, why bother learning about servlets? You will recall from the first chapter that servlets are server extensions and provide extra functionality to the main server. This could include implementation of specialized services, such as authentication, authorization, database validation, and transaction management. Servlets act as controller components that control the business logic. They are developed by Java programmers with strong object-oriented programming skills. On the other hand, JavaServer pages are web pages. They are similar in structure to HTML pages at design time. Any web page designer who has some knowledge of JSP Texts and the basics of Java can write JSP pages. Web applications typically consist of a combination of servlets and JSP pages. A user authentication process that accepts login and password information is a good example. The code that generates the HTML form, success and error messages, and so forth should be in a JSP page, while the code that accesses the database, validates the password, and authenticates the user should be in a servlet. Keep these conventions in mind. JSP pages are meant for visual presentation. Business logic is deferred to servlets. 2. 4 JSP architecture models. The JSP tutorials from Sun describe 2 architectural approaches for building applications using the JSP and servlet technology. These approaches are called JSP Model 1 and JSP Model 2 architectures. The difference between the two lies in the way they handle the requests. 2. 4. 1. The Model 1 architecture. In Model 1 architecture, the target of every request is a JSP page. This page is completely responsible for doing all the tasks required for fulfilling the request. This includes authenticating the client, using Java Beans to access the data, managing the state of the user, and so forth. This architecture is illustrated in Figure 2. 1. Figure 2. 1. The JSP Model 1 architecture. As you can see in Figure 2. 1. There is no central component that controls the workflow of the application. This architecture is suitable for simple applications. However, it has some serious drawbacks that limit its usage for complex applications. First, it requires embedding business logic using big chunks of Java code into the JSP page. This creates a problem for the web page designers who are usually not comfortable with server-side programming. Second, this approach does not promote reusability of application components. For example, the code written in a JSP page for authenticating a user cannot be reused in other JSP pages. 2. 4. 2. The Model 2 architecture. This architecture follows the Model View Controller MVC design pattern, which we will discuss in Chapter 18, Design Patterns. In this architecture, the targets of all the requests are servlets that act as the controller for the application. They analyze the request and collect the data required to generate a response into Java Beans objects, which act as a model for the application. Finally, the controller servlets dispatch the request to JSP pages. These pages use the data stored in the Java Beans to generate a response. Thus, the JSP pages form the view of the application. Figure 2. 2 illustrates this architecture. Figure 2. 2. The JSP Model 2 architecture. The biggest advantage of this model is the ease of maintenance that results from the separation of responsibilities. The controller presents a single point of entry into the application, providing a cleaner means of implementing security and state management. These components can be reused as needed. Then, depending on the client's request, the controller forwards the request to the appropriate presentation component, which in turn replies to the client. This helps the web page designers by letting them work only with the presentation of the data, since the JSP pages do not require any complex business logic. In this way, it satisfactorily solves the problems associated with the Model 1 architecture. 2. 5. A note about JSP syntax. Since this book is specifically meant for the SCWCD exam, its chapters are designed according to the exam objectives specified by Sun. The JSP syntax elements are spread over multiple sections in the exam specification, and therefore, we have spread out the explanations of the elements over several chapters in the book. Table 2.1 contains all of the JSP elements and points out which of them are covered in the exam and which are not. Table 2.1 JSP syntax elements. It also documents in which exam objective sections these elements are addressed and where you can find explanations in this book. 2.6 Summary. In this chapter, we learned about the basics of JavaServer Pages technology and server-side includes. We briefly compared JSP Pages to servlets and discussed when it is appropriate to use one or the other. We also discussed the two JSP architectural models and how they differ in their request handling process.